Hi everybody, I will be doing a 4th grade physical science lesson. I chose to do energy and like forces in motion. So my content statement that I chose to work with today is energy can be transferred from one location to another and can be transformed from one object to another. So with that being said, I want to start the lesson by having a discussion. I feel like starting it with like a KWL chart would benefit the students and for what they know, what they want to know, and what they have learned at the end of the lesson. So, at the beginning of this lesson and the discussion, I want to ask what is energy? How do we create it? What do we gain from it? How does it create motion? And then what they want to keep learning from energy. So that's the information I want to gather before we start this lesson. So I kind of created my own little KWL chart of things that I would want to go over with the students and figured they would already know on this column. So for my know, I have energy is the ability to work as well as making things move. So at the beginning of the lesson, we're going to talk about energy. We're going to review energy and discuss what the different types of energy are and how they, how it works and what it does. Energy takes a wide variety of forms. So that's another discussion. What is energy and where do we see it? Where is it at in the classroom? Force is physical action or movement, and motion is when an object changes position. So with energy, energy creates motion, energy creates force, and that is something we know, but we're going to expand our knowledge on. So what we want to know, the students will talk about it and we will write it down as we discuss it, but I wrote a few things that I think that they would want to know more of. How are forces in motion connected? How does motion occur? What causes force? How can you change and create motion? What is kinetic energy? And what is potential energy? So that is the things that I wrote in our what we want to know column to talk about in this lesson. And then later on in the learned column, we will jot down everything we've learned, all the new ideas and thoughts that we've heard from our peers, and go from there. So, I wanted to do this energy lesson with objects that we use in our environment every day. I think that using the environment and using things like items and common items and everyday items is more beneficial to their learning because it's things that they see every day. So, I want to demonstrate energy by using pennies and force and motion, and how can we get the pennies to move, what positions can we make them do, how can we transfer the energy from one penny to another. I would do this in small groups, so I would have my students partner up, and each group would get a certain amount of pennies to work with and try to create their own energy. So at the beginning of this, I figured that to do the scientific inquiry, which would be about like a huge part of my whole entire lesson, they can ask questions and use evidence to answer and then communicate afterwards. So the beginning is where I would want to know what they want to keep learning. So that's when they ask their questions of how does energy work? How are the pennies going to create energy? How are they going to transfer energy? How are they going to move motion? And then by doing the lesson, that is when we will that's when the students will be able to find out the data, find out the information, jot it down on paper, and using the evidence that they thought that they would do, they will get the outcomes that they expected or the outcomes that they didn't, and then communicate afterwards so we can discuss it as a class and we can share with our partner and our groups and see what everybody else got from it. So with that being said, students will wonder how to actually transfer the energy between the pennies. So they will flick their pennies and transfer the energy between them. So I hope you guys can see. I tried to scoot the camera back as much as possible. Students will move the pennies, watch them move. They could have some lined up. They're just going to experiment with it to see how they can move the energy into another penny. So if you guys saw that, this penny moved, created motion, dropped one. They can flick them. So the point of this activity is to flick one penny to cause a collision and shift in motion. So as we saw, they collide, they do different things, they move. If a penny is sitting right here, this penny that is moving is transferring energy into that one to cause its motion. And depending on how far and how forceful you throw the penny is how far the other one will move. So if it's a gentle tap, it's not going to move much, but it's going to have a lot of force. So those are the types of things I want them to discover and create on their own thoughts, jot them down in a notebook or on a piece of paper, and then we will discuss with the class afterwards. Then I want to also, after that, with that being said, with that being done, we will go over kinetic energy and potential energy, which will be an expansion from learning about energy and how it is transformed. So we are expanding on our knowledge of energy, and we're going to next talk about the different types of energy and what they do and how they work. So that is also on our KWL chart. So at the end, we will come back to our learned column, and we will jot them down and go over, refer back to the KWL chart with the more information and science that we are learning. I think that this is a good way for them to use the scientific inquiry teaching approach. They can think about what is going to happen with the energy and the motion, and then by doing the activity, they will be able to discover their own thoughts and opinions on the energy and how it creates motion, and then actually do the activity to see what actually happens. So I think this is a good one to have them discover their own learning without me telling them. I'm giving them the supplies, I'm giving them the directions, and then they will explore on their own. So that is my lesson.